I'm Diane, Brady, and everybody's going to figure out where Bill's down there. So I'm going to introduce people as they sit down. Bill Ford, Chairman and CEO, General Atlantic. Amy Webb, CEO of Future Today Institute, NYU Stern Professor of course, Peng Xiao, CEO of G42. I'm Diane, Brady, Forbes. This is going to be a very interactive conversation, so if you have questions, we'll get to them certainly. And I want to start, first of all, thank you all for coming. And I really love this conversation because I think we're going to bring some intelligence to what's been a very crowded space with information. So let's start with talking about where you play in the space. Peng, I'm going to start with you.
Great. It's working?
Yes.
Dan, thank you so much for having us here. I am in the space of being an AI practitioner. G42 as a company has been in the AI domain since 2017. And we're among the early adopters of driving AI translationally from research into commercial projects. And I mentioned earlier on stage as a very proud initiator of this AI house Davos. We are now in the business of building what we call intelligence grid. Because we believe AI won't be just another solution, another IT application. Instead, AI will become a utility, just like electricity, potentially even more powerful. So that's what we do today.
Can I ask before I move on, why G42? What does that mean? Because especially in Davos, G20, G6, you can get you can get confused.
Luckily, we're not political at all, and G stands for group, because we believe AI is such a powerful service that can be translated into so many different industry domains. We create a group of companies within G42. 42 comes from my geeky background. I love science fiction. There's a great book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy.
Yes.
In which there's a chapter talking about the meaning of life, and all the human data was ever created, put into the computer, and the answer came back eventually. The meaning of life is 42. In binary code, it's 010101. So there is a link there. But I think a very important thing here, as two professors earlier mentioned, Professor Russell and also Marcus. I want to name the company 42 because I want to remind everyone in my company, hopefully our customers as well and partners, sometimes it's not the answer that matters, it's a question you ask. Mm-hmm. I think AI will not be able to answer many questions we have, but AI will hopefully enable us to ask more and better questions.
Excellent. Amy, Future Today Institute. I'm not going to call you a futurist. That's the wrong way to think about it.
Yeah, I really hate that term.
Okay, it will never be used again.
Let's never ever use that term again.
Gone, banned.
So first what I do and then how that relates to AI. So my team and I, for the past 20 years, have built quantitative models for the purpose of making predictions. Now, that's kind of a verboten thing to say these days, but my background's game theory and economics, and if you have the right data and you build the right model, you can extrapolate from that plausible futures. We do this for the world's largest companies and governments. I work directly with CEOs on some of this, and mostly our clients are trying to figure out where do they play, how do they win, and what makes them resilient going forward. That discipline is called strategic foresight. So that's what I do. How this relates to AI is that a lot of this work really should be done with automatic scraping tools and different ways of identifying patterns without using human bias. So that's something I started doing also 20 years ago, and continue to research AI after that. So we focus on emerging technology as a company. My area of research has always been AI, and more recently synthetic biology and biotech, because the two go together. And I wrote a book, some of you may have read in 2017, about the big 9 companies that control the future of AI, and unfortunately some of the catastrophic scenarios I wrote are coming true. So there we go.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's right. So
you are a futurist
kind of
after
thing
all.
a futurist might have done. Yeah, good. If Peng mentions it, then it did not come from my mouth. And Bill is the money man. And but from an investment point of view, tell me a little bit about how this is factoring into, your day job.
Well,
And hello.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me today, Dan. But Peng is the practitioner, Amy is the researcher, and Futurist, and we're the investor.
You guys are killing me.
I'm sorry.
No more.
You're not shaking it, Amy.
Speak truth to power.
I think this is the fourth major technology wave of my career. I think back to the PC wave, then in the 80s, internet computing in the 90s. Cloud and mobile internet in the 2000s onward, and this is maybe the fourth wave around AI. And I mentioned it that way, not to make it smaller than it is, but it is really that significant a change in everything that's going on in technology. It will change the entire infrastructure of tech in a fundamental ways, and like those three waves, will have implications for business, societies, and economies, not just for the tech sector itself. And I think also like those waves, it's very hard to fully anticipate the implications of it early on because it is so significant. McKinsey estimated that just the productivity benefits alone of AI could be worth $4 trillion to the global economy per year. And for those of us who are investors, that sounds like a pretty good opportunity.
Can you quantify from an investment point of view how much it factors into where you're putting your money? Like, you can give us dollar figures, but I mean, is it really sort of the defining feature of how you're investing now, or is it one of several buckets?
It's not as easy to discuss it that way because we're probably at the venture capital stage where there's a lot of venture capital investment starting to make bets, and,
Right.
The shape of the industry is just starting to come into focus. And so everybody's excited about large language models. OpenAI has rightly captured the imagination of the world. But I think what's going to become probably more interesting are some of the applications that are built on AI and the data that's going to come together. But we're in the early days of that happening.
Yeah.
Now, for us, every one of our 200 portfolio companies has to be thinking about how does AI affect my business, my software product, whatever. So it's having an immediate impact that way. But I think it's still really taking shape where the ripest part of the investment opportunity is going to be.
Every CEO I talk to, AI is always the starting point. And Peng, I want to go to, because you mentioned Sam Altman, Bill. So much of the conversation has been around generative AI as if that's somehow a substitute for AI writ large. I mean, help us distinguish between, in essence, what is AI and what is generative AI, which is really just one portion, but the one that's taking the mind share right now.
No, it's a great question. By the way, I believe Sam Altman is also in Davos.
But he's not here.
Down,
Shame, no.
You should grab him.
In a lesser room.
Brilliant man and great partner. So before there was generative AI, which Sam really caused a whole revolution around over a year ago, there was something more known as artificial discriminative intelligence, more in the narrow domain of being able to, for example, you to speak with Siri on your iPhone and to unlock the phone with your face. It does specific things very well, even better than humans, but very focused and at recognizing objects, classifying them, and perform a particular action. Whereas generative AI is where, for the first time, AI is becoming seemingly capable of mimicking human creativity. They can do something new. At least we think. The truth is that much of it is still regurgitation, repackaging, but it is touching on human creativity. This is not a substitute. This is just another stage of AI development. And we believe in the AI research community, eventually, post this stage, will reach probably AGI, artificial general intelligence, where intelligence for machines become generalizable so that the sensors, the thinking can all take place like us right now, looking at each other, talking to each other, thinking, making a plan, and go do something together in a generalized way. Then finally, after that, we believe there will be ASI, superintelligence.
When's that come? What
The
year?
title of our topic here,
The
the ultimate
ultimate.
invention.
When is ASI? Any well, we should go to Amy.
Exactly. Yeah,
You're going to be very
Strategic foresight. Well, you know what's
disappointed with my answer.
Well, you know what's funny, Amy? I think about, since Sam Altman's not here, OpenAI does not brand itself as generative AI. They talk about themselves in a different way, which speaks to your point as to where they want to fit in the ecosystem.
Sure. I think Sam Altman is a cool guy, but I'd love to give Google a shout out because
Right.
if it was not
Anyone
for
from Google in the room?
It's
Raise
true.
your hand.
It's true.
Absolutely.
So here's the situation. The generative AI is certainly the new hotness, right? But this stems from a paper that was published in 2017. And the challenge is that, I've been trying to get executives to pay attention to artificial intelligence in a much more practical way now for a decade. The problem is the business value. There was such a snowball effect after OpenAI released GPT-3 to the public. What everybody forgets, maybe not this room, but most of the people that I deal with, was that OpenAI put out a press release in February 2020. This was just after Davos when a whole bunch of people got sick. We were all distracted with other things.
Kind of
at that point.
it was a busy news cycle.
But that press release said, we have invented something called GPT-2 that is so dangerous, such a existential threat to humanity, we cannot release it. This hand. It is like 2.5 years later, we're on GPT-4, and as far as I know, there's no AI police that came down, the road or anything else like that. Here's the thing. I know that we're interested in exactly when does the superintelligence come? When does artificial intelligence come? We want to believe in McKinsey's numbers. This is a long horizon technology that started a very, very long time ago and has a very, very long road ahead of it.
I think that's right.
Artificial general intelligence, I would argue, has already shown up in some of the work. Again, not to knock on OpenAI, but Google has been showing, DeepMind has been showing little by little new types of systems, multimodal systems, that by the working definition that most of us use, have started to show some flicks at this type of different intelligence. The problem with the business community and then our regulators, who are always 15 steps behind, is that we expected artificial general intelligence to show up as a walking, talking robot. We've anthropomorphized it. It's supposed
that can
to
smoke. Do you remember the robot that used to?
Right. So there was
that was very cool.
So Google this later on. The Westinghouse Moto Man from the World's Fair in like 1940. It did have some early days AI. It wasn't called that yet. It also smoked cigarettes. Everybody thought that was super exciting. The point is, we're expecting anthropomorphized AI when in fact it's here. We're transitioning.
Yeah.
And it's taken a long time for everybody to recognize, this is what it can do, this is what it cannot do.
And it's an evolution.
And there's
right?
an information asymmetry that I think is holding a lot of businesses back and also leading CEOs to make decisions based on fear and FOMO, the fear of missing out.
That's fair.
Yeah.
The fear factor indeed is very.
Well, you can see why, given the rhetoric that's even coming from the companies themselves. Bill, I want to ask what's on your radar in terms of even some of the specific ways in which you're intrigued by how AI is showing up today. What's really catching your attention?
Well, I've got an example to talk about that might bring some of the points that Peng and Amy talked about to life. And we started about 3 or 4 years ago with a data science capability that we were applying to our portfolio companies with the idea that, and this goes back to as we were just talking about, that before the AI, there was a lot going on with algorithms and using data more productively, et cetera. And so we created a data science capability with the idea that if we can help our companies capture their data more effectively and start to at least apply algorithms, we can actually do a lot of interesting things with those companies and maybe even discover some new avenues of growth. That was where we started. And then recently for ourselves, and this may be a good practical example, we created, let me back up. We have a 5-person investment committee. 5 people meet every week. All the investments come in. We make a decision, yes or no. We read investment memos. We look at data, like most investment committees around the world. So we decided to go back and look at 44 years of investment history at General Atlantic, all the decisions we made, all the data we had, and start to apply AI and say, let's create an AI. We call it an AI robot. We named it. It's called Ada. And Ada is our 6th person on the investment committee, and Ada votes on every deal now. Now, what Ada is
really. So can take us to a meeting where Ada's there? So, in what way do you then take a vote and we turn to the machine?
We actually have a system that takes actual votes with comments, but Ada is looking at 43 years of data, looking at KPIs, and it's learning because it's asking different questions and wanting more data. And it's looking at that and says, I recommend yes or no, and here's why. And it comes up warning, unrealistic expectation of margin increase relative to 43 years of history. And what's interesting, it's using external resources like OpenAI, internal data, and other public data. It's pulling it all together. And to me, it's a very practical application. Now, this is a Gen 1 of this, right?
How does Ada do relative to the 5 partners?
Well, the 5 partners have done okay so far against Ada. Pretty consistent, but I have to say, it's identified some things. Any investment committee, any human system is subject to cognitive bias. And Peng makes investment decisions too, and he'll tell you there's just no way you can fully squeeze it out. This system squeezes it out because there is no cognitive bias. It's looking at data, it's looking at information, looking at facts, sucking it all in, and making a judgment.
If you allow me, Bill,
Yeah,
that's
please.
a great example of what Microsoft is promoting as a co-pilot, right? This is a co-pilot on your board.
Yeah,
And in fact, my chairman has given us a task this year that he want to create a co-chairman. He said, walking to
Artificial
all this.
co-chairman?
Yes, on the iPad, walking to any meeting, having read all the material and 50 plus years of history, and make much better informed comments, conducting better board meetings. Otherwise, you as a chairman of, in case of my chairman, of hundreds of companies on the board, how do you possibly add value when you don't have the time to read the material?
At this juncture, where would the co-chairman and Ada be lacking? I'm thinking of, like, in one respect, it brings diversity to the table, and the other is, not really. I'm going to ask you about that.
I haven't seen either of your, I'm sure your models are both pretty and lovely and awesome.
Early.
But it's okay.
1.0.
Brace yourself.
Well, but here's the situation. It's very, very hard to build a model that's truly going to offer unique insights, not tethered to whoever built it. So I've built different digital versions of myself using, I've trained AI models on me using publicly available data, which is ostensibly the way that somebody else might build this for their own organizations. The problem is that I am not my public persona. So the version of me that is external, the thought leadership, I believe all of that, but ultimately that is not 100% of how I make my decisions. There's a X% that's not insubstantial, that is different from what is publicly available that I might put into a corpus. So what I would ask is, why are we doing this? And I got sort of, it was a venture capitalist and a banker that cornered me at a meeting last summer, and we're very excited about OpenAI because, the venture capitalist, it was not, nobody on your team.
Sounds like the start of
good.
the joke.
I'm
A
glad.
venture capitalist
Good it
and a
wasn't my
banker
team.
walk
That's
into a
good.
bar.
But a VC came up to me and was very excited to tell me how AGI was coming and was going to wipe out humanity, and did I agree with him? And I'm like, come on, man, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning.
How many digital selves of yourself did you create?
No, he wanted to wax philosophical, and I just wasn't into it. The banker wanted to know.
Bill, you get to respond to this, by the way.
The more practical part of the conversation was the banker who was interested in how to achieve bottom line growth using AI, which is another way of saying automated to get to attrition, reduction in headcount. That is not the way to think about the future of AI. So if you're using it additively as a way to gain an extra perspective, 1.0, 5.0, that's great. But most of what I'm seeing in the marketplace are CEOs who are concerned about potential recessions. They're worried about uncertainty.
Well, they're measured quarter to quarter.
They
You can't
absolutely
blame them.
are. Long-term planning has, now it's quarter to quarter or worse. So a lot of companies, unfortunately, see AI as a race to cut costs through automation,
Well, I want
which
to
is
talk
not
with
the
the
right
corporate,
way.
but I want to give Bill a chance to respond to. I feel like we've dissed Ada somehow. Have we?
Poor
Are you-
Ada.
I don't know Ada.
maybe
Maybe
Poor
she's
Ada,
not
she just got
projecting him.
started.
Yeah,
she's only
exactly. You gotta
1.0.
start
Can I ask
somewhere.
you a question?
Yeah.
Since you've called her she, on your investment committee, how many women are there?
We've won, Ada. No, we're working on that.
Therefore,
That's
you
another,
now have
that's
gender
another-
diversity.
Okay.
Congratulations.
But that's maybe another reason why to have Ada. Maybe that's a cognitive bias that's in there. I don't know.
No, I think there's valid
you could
reasons
learn.
in that.
You could learn from that, actually. I was going to say we were talking to a CIO for a large endowment pool of capital, and they were very eager to figure out how could AI, how could ChatGPT help them. And they identified 10 different areas, everything from investment memos, filing away recommendations, et cetera, 10 areas where AI could have an impact. And they broke them down between two different ways. What would generate alpha, which in the investment world means excess return, excess performance, and how much was productivity? And 8 out of 10 were productivity. It will save me time to write my investment memo.
And is that iterative? I mean, is like when you say 8 out of 10, or I mean, give us some sense. Is that do you want to reverse that? Should it be less going forward?
I think it just makes the point we're still in early days.
Okay.
You'd love to believe that it's going to generate tons of alpha if the models are so good and the AGI is so amazing, it should generate superior investment returns and generate investment alpha. And my point is just, I think they recognize we're still in the very early days of that. It can help a lot on productivity. And it is helping on productivity. It's not yet really an alpha generator. Again, because we're early days. I agree with Amy. This is a very, very long journey that we're on.
What's interesting when you talk about the inadequacies of the technology, that is one of the reasons why the people who create that technology have cautioned that we could be jumping into things for which we have unforeseen consequences that could be very damaging. I mean, I don't know if we think about sort of ethical, responsible AI. Peng, I'm going to go to you. How much does that factor into how you're thinking about even the infrastructure that you're building, since we're already talking about things like, like Amy said, whatever you put into these models is how it expresses itself?
Yeah, another great question, Diane. I think as a practitioner...
Thank you. No, just kidding.
No. Only kidding, huh?
No.
No, seriously, my role is not a policymaker or academic.
Okay.
My role is to find the relevance in a great technology, how that can be translated into real positive impact across all sectors. To that extent, what I've been doing, what our company's been doing, is to focus not just on building great language models and working with our researcher partners around the world, but we are building what is referred to as this digital infrastructure. Like it or not, even though AI is not ready today for prime time, because the reasoning is not good enough, that's one of the main reasons why we cannot trust them just yet. Reasoning is a big issue. But I believe it's coming. There are different ways of getting there, but superior intelligence to our own is coming. By the way, if you allow me to say this, what's so great about human intelligence? Are we really that intelligent? We have 2 wars going on right now, killing each other. In this day and age, we are still firing bullets at each other. We're not that intelligent. It's time to evolve.
Maybe.
So we should be very open to explore other forms of intelligence. And we believe it's coming, and you have to build the future infrastructure for it. I was just in Africa. It's a continent of 1.3 billion people, average of 18. When AI is ready, that continent will be on fire. They'll demand it. But if there are no data centers, no connectivity, no green energy, no chips, there will be revolution. So we are right now building this business architecture. We call this 5 vital organs of producing AI. Number 1, of course, is AI science. That is the brain power of AI, the brain. Second, data center. That's a muscle. You got to have that deliver. Then you need the connectivity, which is the nerves. Then you need, of course, energy, green energy, and that is lifeblood. And finally, you need a lot of chips, AI chips, for both training and inference. That's the heart of AI.
It is reminding me of Cisco with the router becoming the backbone of
friend,
the internet. John Chambers
said
yes.
Genius, right? The Internet of Things, IoT.
So that's what you need to create.
The ecosystem.
Okay.
The world need to prepare for the eventuality of this so-called ultimate invention coming. And we are busy doing that right now.
I do want to tell, I've got, just so you know, speaking of intelligence, my confidence monitor's like cryogenically frozen at the same time. So if somebody wants to throw a shoe at me, I'm not sure where we are on the timing, because I do want to go to questions from the audience. But I want to put on some different hats. Let me talk about politics, because clearly this is a space that has been politicized. And I just say this as somebody who used to live in China. I feel we speak so much about Xi Jinping. I have so little knowledge of what's going on the ground from a country that we know has been doing incredible work in this area. I mean, Amy, I'm going to go to you first. Like when you think about the political environment, let me put on a policymaker hat. What advice do you have to policymakers in this space? Because we've certainly seen restrictions in the U.S. I know you're at, Abu Dhabi. You'd have some, but give me some sense as to what message you'd want to convey.
Sure, I have some thoughts on that. And then I actually want to highlight something that Peng has been doing that I think is super impressive, and his team. Everybody is trying to sort out regulations. Europe, the EU, as always, was early on this, having built many, many years of different frameworks and regulatory actions around data and use of data. So EU's got a new AI Act that they've been working on for a long time. The United States has an executive order under Biden, which I guess is maybe going to potentially get enforced, but we don't really have an agency to do that. And China has a very strong leader, Xi Jinping, who has built AI into the latest 5-year plan cycle and has a vested interest in seeing AI and also biotech succeed as a way of boosting economic growth and managing what the future looks like for more than 1 billion people. So the issue is we've got, in the United States, sort of all the decisions being made on the development side, the commercial side of things and investment side of things. In the EU, it's very top-down regulation heavy, and in China, it's very government top-down heavy. And in each one of these situations, there are different incentive structures and different end goals.
Which would you pick?
Well, here's what I was going to say. All of these systems are bad because regulation is inherently a reaction to something that's already happened. It's not setting a course forward for something that could happen in a better way. I don't think the regulatory structures of democracy work for AI. So I think it's going to, and most of what we're seeing in the West is punitive. The easiest way to prolong, there was a reason why we see multiple rounds of tech leaders coming to Washington, D.C. asking, please, please regulate us. When this happened most recently with
Often
AI, well, it wasn't the first time, right? Yeah, but what are they fighting? We're all trying to avoid long-term protracted lawsuits and everything else. So rather than making this punitive, incentivize. My thought is the best way to do this is financially incentivize everybody to make a, are we being broadcast?
Let's pretend that, I think any room with more than 6 people, you can assume it's public
I was going to use a technical term.
Yeah, don't tweet.
I was going to say...
It's Chatham House. I didn't mention it at the beginning, so...
All right, then the technical term I was going to use was shit ton.
Yeah, okay, well,
we need
that's a technical term.
Incentivize these companies to make a shit ton of money by doing the right thing. That's something everybody will respond positively to. I was going to ask if Bill agrees,
but first you were going to compliment Peng on something.
Right.
I don't want to miss that opportunity.
That's my thing.
Quick, compliment Peng, then I want to go to Bill.
Right. So my point is there's not a government that's doing this the right way.
Sounds like China's furthest ahead from what you think about in terms of that's not
China.
Democracies are not.
It's real easy to push a singular agenda through when you have a singular agenda. That's just not the case in other places. Here's what I was going to say about Peng and G42. I'm not being paid to say this. I just believe it.
No, nobody's being paid.
So
I'm not being paid. Just as FYI.
You got to ask next time. So look.
No, I don't get paid.
We are all aware.
I'm getting nervous, by the way.
Oh, no. It's a compliment. You're about to get a compliment. Don't worry. Brace yourself for a compliment.
Is there an AI Cold War? Is there not? Is a silly conversation because the answer is obviously yes. We're in it. The United States and China have very, very different ideas on what the future looks like.
What do you love about G42?
That are not harmonized. So what's happening in the Emirates, and specifically inside of G42, is that since your inception, you're actually using different data centers from everybody. You're kind of a neutral center.
Try to maintain neutrality. Yeah.
Switzerland,
right? Which is just but that's kind of significant.
That's a good one.
It's very, very hard to do that. I haven't seen that anywhere else, which I think is kind of awesome.
How much?
Thank you.
How much does policy do you think about it in the context of your world? Because obviously you're witnessing. I don't know if you want. I can put the investor hat on. You can give advice to other investors if you prefer. But do you want to weigh in on this first?
I don't have a lot to say about the policy stuff, but I mean, I think we're This is a global
Right.
cycle of innovation, and everybody's needs to have. Every country's going to have an AI strategy. Every company's going to have an AI strategy, and you're going to see a tremendous amount of dynamic innovation taking
Let me put on the investor hat then, because there's a lot of money. I don't know if you'd call it hot. I don't know if there's a bubble. I mean, but what when you look at the amount of money that's going into this space, is there a lot of dumb money going into certain areas, or what advice do you have to investors?
I think every time you've seen a technology wave of this magnitude happen, there's what I'll use a maybe not the most flattering term, but a hype cycle that goes on. There's so much excitement.
Better than shit ton.
I can't win today.
Okay, there's just always a moment. I mean, if you. I'm way too old for all of you guys, but if you go back to the PC era, right when there was so much excitement about PC computing, there were about 20 companies making disk drives. And everybody threw money in the disk drive companies and said, this is going to be amazing. They're all going to go to the moon. And the reality was, it was an important component. It commoditized. It consolidated. They weren't wrong about the PC industry. The PC industry was phenomenal. It would change computing forever. But at that moment of hype, there was a lot of money put into a lot of companies that didn't survive. And that happened again with the internet. We all know that. It happened again with SaaS software. And it'll probably happen again now. That doesn't mean this isn't going to be an incredibly powerful technology cycle with wonderful investment opportunities and probably new leading companies. Every time you've had this shift, it's been a new cycle of leaders. And you have one
So
generation.
don't assume the current titans will be tomorrow's titans.
The only thing that makes this a little different is the capital intensity of it.
Right.
The last ones were less capital intensive, and this time the titans have an edge because of capital. The dollars are big here, and Peng can tell us about that.
Very big. I was going to just add to this, Bill. If you look at today's global data center capacity, I think it's less than 60 gigawatt globally. In our analysis, the world to serve even today's generative intelligence as a service, as inference service for the rest of the world, you need probably 10x amount of data centers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Each single megawatt is $10 million.
Mm-hmm.
One gigawatt is $10 billion. So this is massive capital intensity.
Exactly. That's what makes it a little bit different than the last cycles. But I think there still is a hype cycle going
That's
on,
fair.
for sure.
I want to go to the audience, but first I want to put on the CEO hat. If you quickly have any advice to CEOs, and I'm going to go to you first, Peng, just because there are many business leaders that are just looking at this space thinking, they're either FOMO or fear, or maybe a bit of both, obviously.
I think if you are a CEO and thinking you have a great business plan for the next 5 years, the company's already had a profitable revenue growth is virtually guaranteed, think again. If you don't have an AI plan for the next 5 years, you're failing. No matter what your financial forecast today, if you don't have an AI component for at least the next 5 to 10 years, you are not qualified to run this company. That's my simple statement.
You're nodding, Amy.
Yeah, I would say that just broader. Most companies are no longer doing long-term plans. They're just not. Or if they are, it's 2 years, 3 years. And what I hear most is, we cannot possibly plan. We're just worrying about the next couple of quarters. To Peng's point, AI is going to be one of these. It's here, but the micro developments, because generative AI is one thing. Multimodal is very quickly going to be next. You have to do long-range planning, and it doesn't mean predicting exact futures, and it doesn't mean that you must be ready for everything. You must, however, be ready for anything, and long-range, data-driven planning is what enables that inside of organizations. Very few companies are actually doing this beyond the sort of financial perspective.
Oh, we haven't talked about the quality of data. Let me go. Can I get a time check from somebody with a watch? Is 15:38? It was 15:38 a while ago, so that's what it is now. Okay.
Okay.
50 minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to get some. Do you want to introduce yourself? I don't know if there's mics, but I think it's an intimate enough gathering you can project.
So it's like I come out of the health and wellness industry, and I just, especially for Peng and Amy, Bill, your idea of having Ada, and I salute you on that. So it's a very interesting idea to have both your chairman.
I salute it too, by the way,
Someone in the
to
leadership,
try.
This AI and leadership, no one can process 40 years of information. No executive can sit down at the table.
Yeah, no.
What's the question?
So the question is, like, you look at take the U.S. Congress, for example. People are voting on bills like that, wide impact on society. No one's read the thing.
assuming they would want it. What do you think? Yeah.
So, little known fact, a billion years ago, IBM Watson, their research team built something called Project Debater, and it did what you're describing. So you could go in and argue af or neg, or argue different sides of a case, and it had a lot of the policy research in it. It's actually a really, really cool tool. One of the problems with the AI research community is that they've struggled to figure out how to commercialize their products and find a market for them, which is why some of the exceptional research never sort of made its way through.
I think I am probably least qualified here to comment on or advise U.S. Congress. But I do believe they could use a congressional co-pilot to do some fact-checking in their basic work. Like you said, everybody is overwhelmed with data, especially in public discourse, in all societies now, where there's so much misinformation and disinformation. It's more important than ever to leverage every tool you have to find better signals from the noises.
Did anybody see the Edelman Trust Barometer, where basically Republicans by a 40-point margin don't trust innovation, and Democrats, and that's frightening if you've got people, especially in the U.S. It was the one country in the world that really, by a large margin, maybe it's because of the vaccines, but that if they don't trust that innovation is working in their favor, that has interesting implications for where the money goes when there's regime changes. Anybody have any other questions? Please, hi. Can we let's do one question at a time? Is that okay? I mean, I know, I love the media. But I'm just going to go to Bill first. And sorry, you gave us your name? Yes. Okay.
Yes, Ada's voted against a number of things and disagreed with the investment committee. We've had that happen already. It's too early to tell because we've only been doing it for about 9 months. We've been implementing this, and so the self-learning. What I'm really excited to see is we actually track the performance of the decisions by the humans on the IC over time, like who correlates with investment success and who doesn't. And that's actually a factor that's in some of the data that's collected by Ada. But we're going to see over time.
So if you talk, she gives extra points, that kind
less,
of thing?
I think less, probably. But I think that feedback loop will come. That will be the self-learning that we're looking for. But we need we need some more repetitions before we get there.
I'm going to go to you, and I will say it's still 15 minutes on my clock. So this is human intelligence.
I think that's the time. It's 3:42, 15:43 is the time
I see.
it is.
Okay, so we have, okay, good. Sorry. Forgive me. I need an Ada. Hi.
Amy.
No, you want to give your name and just wait? Everybody loves Ada.
Oh my God.
We all want Ada.
Should be a product
Can she
you
do
sell.
dishes? We really want Ada.
My question is, who created Ada, and was it a bunch of people? And how do we deal with the inherent bias in AI judgment? So
Which is a good, yeah. Well, it's a good point. And Amy, but
Yeah, our data science team is
feeling
gender
self-conscious
diverse.
about Ada.
Our data science team and tech team that did it is gender diverse. So unlike our investment committee, which we're working on, it is got a full. It's actually a global team, men and women. So I don't think we have any inherent bias in the development of it. And actually the whole goal is to try to squeeze out those kind of biases. That's the real goal by focusing on data.
But I think, Bill, if you allow me, from a data science point of view, the data you train train Ada with itself.
Amy's been trained on a lot of data.
She mentioned that many digital versions of herself. That's why it crossed my mind.
She is a professor and she's written books.
But that data itself can have bias, right? Who produced it in the first place? So that there could be bias factor from that perspective.
It could be. And again, I think this maybe goes something that all three of us or all four of us have really said.
I'm here to ask questions. Go
Okay,
ahead.
we have to answer. It's still really early days here, and we're all still learning about this technology, and it's going to be a long journey.
Could I add a point?
Of course.
I know it feels like the train has left the station and everybody has to hurry up and make an investment or do a thing. And if you're a startup, you have to change your name to whatever it is .ai so that people pay attention. The decisions that you make are critical because this type of technology is a layered technology. And by that I mean the decisions today have a compounding effect over time
Yes.
and result in outcomes tomorrow. So whether you are building a chatbot and gendering it or not gendering it, which data you determine are best to put into an initial corpus that's going to be trained. One of the big unspoken stories about AI is it requires a ton of humans. Most of the people labeling training data are in emerging economies in places like Pakistan and
Africa.
And in Africa. And the issue is, if you are if I were to say something like, yay, cold McDonald's, a lot of you get from the tone of my voice, I don't mean that, it's sarcasm. But if you see that in print and you are labeling and you don't understand American sarcasm, you may mislabel that data as pure joy or love. So
Often indistinguishable.
yes, the decisions that are being made are not inconsequential. And it's really important that you start thinking through next order implications and knock-on
I think
effects.
that's a good point. Before we go to another question, we probably have time for about 2 more. Peng, do you want to mention the choices you've made, whether it's cloud, otherwise, since we're talking about these important foundational decisions that have to be made as you're building out? Maybe you don't want to talk about it, but if you do.
No, I can speak high level to this. AI is, as Amy and Bilbo said, it's here already and is developing rapidly. You have to have the right partners to work with to take the next stage because it's all about skill. You cannot be dilutive. You cannot make too many bets. So at G42, we made our bet. We believe the most advanced AI players in the world are centralized around Silicon Valley. And we've pivoted towards that group of partners and working with them very closely, including our cloud infrastructure.
As opposed to what?
To maintain the previous position, say, from a couple of years ago, we were trying to have this neutrality to be able to work with all sides.
I see.
It's becoming, frankly speaking, politically more and more difficult, and also, honestly, scientifically more and more challenging because it's a skill game. You have to scale now with the right partners. If you are dilutive with everyone, you can't scale.
Okay, fair enough. Other questions over there? Hi.
My name is Mala Balasa. I work with Versus as well. And I was wondering if you had an opinion on how we might use the predictive power and the extended temporal depth of the predictive power of AI to understand the different systems like US, Europe, and China and lead towards a more harmonious agenda rather than an arms race.
Who would like to take that?
I'll say a couple of
idea.
things real quick
Sure,
first, if you don't
great.
mind, follow up on my earlier statement. I think AI is so powerful that policymakers, nations do need to be careful. There is undoubtedly a competition going on right now. AI can be applied to health, biology, can also be applied to warfare. It's the honest truth. AI can be used in cybersecurity now in potentially offensive way. So it's right for governments and policymakers to be guarded in their policy vis-a-vis other national players. But we cannot afford for nations to have black boxes around them. But for example, US have no clue what China is doing, right? That's very risky. It's already enough risk. Google may not know what Microsoft is
Does
doing, for
anybody but
example.
China know what China's doing? I mean, it's
That
a
I
black
don't know.
box. I mean, I'm
It
just
is a
saying-
black box.
I'm-
It is a black box, honestly. But that's my point. It's a risk. So at a different level, at the research level, we should allow scientists to communicate and work with each other. That's my basic take.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So,
Do you just want to introduce yourself first? Since we're off the record, Nathan.
for the people-centered internet, and the World Bank defined in their year review
2023 as the year of inequality. How would you define 2024?
Bill, do you want to take that one? Quick.
Boy, that's really hard.
You can just pick a word. I'm kidding.
Volatility.
It's a good
Volatility.
word.
I think it's going to. I think with the number of elections going on around the world right now, with 2 military conflicts, with the disruption of AI, I think we're going to have a volatile environment.
It's very good. Amy, do you want to have
I don't have anything to add. I think that's
Peng?
apt.
Opportunity also. With volatility,
Volatility and
arbitration,
opportunity.
opportunity.
Does that resonate?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Gila Turbans, faculty over at Professor Webb Medical School, and we're seeing a lot of AI, obviously in medicine, but and that's kind of the world we're looking into. But sometimes there are also risks there, right, with national information and things like that. And so that's kind of an area with high potential, but also high risk. Do you see areas that are kind of at the other extreme, either low potential, high risk or low risk? Can you give us kind of a feeling by sectors?
Yeah.
See that risk?
One of the things interesting about healthcare to me is when you've got this trust divide, marginalized communities, and you talk about digital self, will they lose out if they're not trusting in these systems too, which fascinates me. But you want to weigh in?
I'll speak at a high level to this. By the way, we work closely with David Sinclair and also George Church, great friends of ours, doing amazing work, by the way, all of you guys in your school. Congratulations. I think it's a very challenging question you just posed, especially in the field of medicine. UAE, for example, where my company is, we're running the largest genomic program in the world, genome sequencing. We have close to 100 petabyte of WGS information. Many of them are 30x resolution data sets. DNA, as you probably all know, is our human source code. The value is enormous if we can unlock it collectively, the society level. By the way, UAE has more than 200 nationalities, right, representing the world. Then we potentially are just building a new drug discovery platform for the world. But along the way, if something gets compromised, then yes, there's a grave consequences on privacy and other considerations. So for us practitioners,
Liability too.
Huge liability issues. So for us, the key here is to have a safety model in our design from literally the physical data management, data center, server storage, all the way to logical control on top of it. By the way, I want to mention, sitting in front row here is our chairman of Department of Health, Minister of Health from the UAE. He's here, His Excellency Mansour. We also work very closely with our regulators to make sure we are properly given the right oversight. But it's a very challenging issue. There's no simple way to solve this problem.
Yeah. But huge potential. Very, very exciting to see what's happening.
The world will need, in my opinion, much more than large language models. We need a large biology model. Mm-hmm. We don't even understand ourselves right now. It's a big issue.
I want to be cognizant of the time now that I understand it, and I'm going to just have each of you give some final thoughts, in terms of what you want the takeaway to be, what's on your radar that you'd put on ours. And I'm going to start with you, Bill.
I'm going to speak by analogy again. If you go back to the earlier days of the internet, traditional companies were all confused about what it meant, and the most significant ones recognized it was a major disruption, and they needed to take it seriously. They needed to begin to build strategies and experiment, and many of them prevailed and transformed their businesses and thrive to this day. The ones who didn't were, I think, severely disadvantaged. And so my takeaway is this is a fundamental shift in technology, long-term implications, and it's something that every company needs to invest in and plan for.
Okay. Amy?
All right, I have 3 quick takeaways for you. The first picks up on the question that you asked. So the next thing that's coming in AI, there are many next things coming in AI, but the next big thing is the convergence between AI and biology. We already have write access to life, not just read access, not just edit access, but write access that completely changes
Can you
everything
just define
going
that
forward.
quickly? What do you mean write access?
So if read access is genome sequencing, edit access is CRISPR, write access is synthetic biology. So we have the ability to do things like treat CO2 as a feedstock, right? Re-engineer life. Huge opportunities. For this reason, there is a enormous amount of capital flowing into both AI and biotech. That takes me to my second point, which is I am very worried that investors are going to be sad that they're not getting the returns they thought they were going to get, and they're going to suck that money back up because the commercialization of this tech is going to take longer than I think people realize. What does it take to get something going inside of a company? Companies move very slowly. So we had an AI winter in the 80s. I would hate for the same thing to happen in the West now, when the incentive structures are different in other countries that maybe have different ideas about what the future should look like, and they're going to plow forward. So that leads to my third key takeaway for you, and it's the most important. You must engage in long-term planning. You can no longer stick your heads in the sand and hope things are going to work out or start making decisions based in fear and FOMO. You need data, you need models, and you need patience. You need to do long-term planning to see what plausible futures might look like and then backwards engineer that to strategy today.
What is long term, just to clarify before we move to Peng? Like, is it like 3 to 5 years, 10 years,
It totally
300?
Yep,
I mean,
it completely depends on the industry and its application of tech. So for insurance, 10 years. Banking, I know this sounds crazy, 3. And it's going to slide differently on the biotech side of things.
Okay. Last word to you.
Banking may not be there anymore in 3 years, right? So it's
Now,
you're
you
absolutely
heard
right.
it here first.
You got to plan for your potential demise. It's real. I want to return to the title of the theme of our discussion today, the ultimate invention. Some people also refer to this as a final invention, a last invention. Professor Russell mentioned this earlier, but it doesn't need to be a bad thing in the sense that we lose control altogether. It could be the final invention where it will then invent everything else we need for us. For example, cure for all cancers. Mm-hmm. You get to AGI, you get to ASI, it cures all cancers. It will begin to invent everything. We don't need to invent anymore. We have this ultimate tool. I'm very optimistic this is the direction we're headed. I cannot tell you scientifically, mathematically, it's conclusive, I'm 100% sure, but emotionally, I believe this is the way we're going. So we all need to engage now, as my 2 other fellow speakers said earlier, get into the action, get to understanding AI better, use it, try it, and be part of it. Thank you.
Excellent. Please join me in thanking Bill, Amy, and Peng, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Okay.
Thank you.